Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Greenbelt Youth Ambassador launch event. I just wanted to let everyone know that we will be recording this presentation before we get started. So my name is Ariella, and I am a recent master's graduate from the University of Miami. And I'm starting off this presentation on discovering how you can help create a greener future. So here's just a brief overview of the agenda for our presentation today. We're going to start with the program overview, then go into the Greenbelt and the problem, solution, and then talking about the Greenbelt Youth Ambassadors. So just to give us a brief overview, the Ambassadors is a team of youth who are working towards making meaningful positive impacts for the environment and our communities. So what to expect for our event this evening is an intro to the Greenbelt, a summary of the threats to the Greenbelt and the surrounding areas, learning about how you can take action, and an overview of the Greenbelt Youth Ambassador program. And this is just a quick snapshot of the team on one of our many Zoom calls. And now I will be passing it off to Cameron.
Hi, I'm Cameron. As Ariella said, I am a first-year math student at the University of Waterloo, and I've got a question for you guys. I want to know what environmental issues matter to you. Really, I want to know, why do you care about the environment? Because, no, really, I want you guys to tell us. So what you can do is head to the top of your screen, press View Options, then Annotate, and you can just type 3 to 4 words about why you're here. So for example, I am here because I want to protect green spaces. So I'll type that out in a not too big a font, not blocking anybody else. And then boom, you can see that popping up on screen. Let's see, we got somebody else that cares about green spaces. I like your thinking. And we'll just give it a second there while people type it out. Yes, I see a heart there. Hearts are good. We're going to want to use text right now, though. Wildlife is good. Yeah, protecting animals. Climate change is very concerning, and in all caps with exclamation marks. I see somebody else. Oh, that was me that wrote protecting green spaces. Never mind that. I see we've got a big F. Protecting animals is good. Climate change is very concerning. All right, we'll give it another minute or so, 30 seconds maybe. Inspiration from nature, yeah. Protecting our water quality, that's very important. I got my water right here. Ooh, citizen science. I like citizen science too. And foods, conserving the environment. All right, so I'm just gonna say we're good right now. Climate change, all right. You got 10 seconds, we'll say, to put any last thoughts on there, and then we'll be moving on, okay? 3, 2, 1.5, 1. All right, we'll call that good. So you might be thinking now, okay, why are you asking us this? Well, do you guys know what is a very handy dandy tool that we can use to protect green spaces, to protect animals, to help mitigate the effects of climate change, or to maintain the water quality? Well, on the next slide, it's the Greenbelt, of course, if you couldn't figure out that we were going to be talking about that from our name. So I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with the Greenbelt, but just as a quick reminder, the Greenbelt is an area surrounding the Greater Golden Horseshoe area that is set aside to protect the natural state of it and to keep agriculture there. Really, the goal of it is to help prevent sprawl from heading out. On the next slide, we have a couple of the big benefits of the Greenbelt that we wanted to talk to you guys about. So one of the benefits of the Greenbelt is food security. I think somebody mentioned that on our first slide. But so Toronto in the area is built on some of the best farmland in Canada, but we have a city on that, and that's not good. It's good farmland. We want to grow food there, right? So the Greenbelt helps protect farming operations that are already set up and prevents us from putting housing projects on them. Another benefit of the Greenbelt is carbon sequestration. What does that mean? Well, what that means is the Greenbelt has a lot of plants in it, yeah? And if we remember from high school science, plants pull carbon dioxide out of the air. That's a good thing right now. And the Greenbelt has a lot of plants, meaning they pull out a lot of carbon dioxide. It's something like 55 million cars worth of carbon dioxide pulled out of the air annually. I'm sorry, does somebody have their mic on? Yeah. All right. And then the next benefit of the Greenbelt I want to talk about is flood mitigation. And that's simply the Greenbelt helps water go where it's supposed to go. So it stays out of people's homes. And really, as we build closer and closer to the Greenbelt and disrupt natural systems, the threats of flooding increase. Now again, sorry, the Greenbelt also lowers ambient temperatures in areas due to the tree coverage and the river valleys. And then, like people said on the first slide, the Greenbelt helps provide a habitat for a whole wealth of native species who are at risk, including the peregrine falcon, as we see there. Now on the next slide, we can see a map of the Greenbelt. And actually what you guys can do now, if you feel so inclined, is head back up to the options and annotate like we had earlier and go to stamp this time instead of text. And then you can just put down a little stamp where you're from. So I'm from Pickering, so I'm just going to put a stamp down right there on Pickering. And then we'll just take a second or two for you guys to do that.
Cameron, could I just ask you to just guide people on how to annotate once again? We
All right, sure. Yeah, not a problem. So head up to the view options at the top of your screen. It should say you're viewing Mars GBYA's screen, and then there's a view options button right next to that. You click that, select the annotate button, and then stamp, and you can pick whichever stamp you want. And then while the last of people do that, let's just take a second to look at the general shape of the Greenbelt, okay? So we can see the big gray city of Toronto and the suburbs there. And then around that, we can see the big Greenbelt around it, right? Well, you might say, well, Cameron, why is the Greenbelt going around Toronto so much like that? Well, the Greenbelt is shaped like that to promote the three big goals of the Greenbelt that we have laid out on the next slide. That we will be moving to shortly. There we go. And yeah. Okay, so the three big goals of the Greenbelt is, as we said earlier, is to help protect Ontario's farmland and natural heritage. So what that means is, while I like a nice, pretty looking building as much as the next person, I think that protecting our environment is pretty good too. Now, another goal of the Greenbelt is to promote the development of complete communities. And what that means is at some point you got to build up, not wide. And Kaylee will be going into a bit more detail on that later. But ultimately, promoting complete communities is to accomplish the third goal, which is preventing further urban sprawl, which we'll touch on a little bit more later. But it's all just stopping that going wide when we could be going up instead. And then on the next slide, we just have some fun facts about the Greenbelt. So the Greenbelt was created in 2005, meaning it turned 15 last year. It's the biggest Greenbelt in the world at more than 2 million acres and provides some 180,000 full-time jobs, which bring in more than $9 billion annually. And then, like I said earlier, it offsets the carbon production of about 55 million cars. Now I'm going to be passing things over to Nita now, who's going to be talking about some threats to the Greenbelt.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nita, and I'm a grade 10 student from Pine Ridge Secondary School, and I will be presenting the problems/threats to the Greenbelt. So the Greenbelt has many threats that include Highway 413 and Holland Marsh Highway, also sprawl-style infrastructure. It's not just highways, but power plants also. So what is an MZO? MZOs allow the Municipal Affairs and Housing Minister to make a ruling on how a piece of land is to be used in the province with no chance of appeal by municipalities, citizens, or environmental groups. These rulings impact significant lands that are bordering the Greenbelt. So why are MZOs significant? 2020 had huge impact, notably in the number of MZOs issued by the minister. As of November 2020, there were 31 MZOs issued compared to 0 in 2018 and 2017. So other examples include the Flatto development in Whitchurch, Stouffville. This allowed for development at the edge of the Greenbelt on land zoned for agriculture, flood zone, and the environment. So there was a minister's zoning order in the lower Duffins Creek wetland, which is in Pickering. I'm also located in Pickering, so the environmental club at my school made a petition against what was happening, and we got a lot of people who signed it, but unfortunately the bill had already passed. But don't worry, the club is still going today, and we are continuing to fight against threats to the environment. So the lower Duffins Creek wetlands allowed complete destruction of the western portion to make warehouses, which would destroy a rare and essential remnant of coastal Great Lakes wetlands, as well as additional areas to make Durham Live, which is an extensive entertainment complex. So we need the Greenbelt to protect the natural services that are provided. The Greenbelt is a tool that is used to help preserve the land that we rely on. The government should be protecting this land to help preserve this ecological space. So Highway 413 is a toll highway that would pave over farmland, forests, wetlands, and part of the Greenbelt and White Belt. It is estimated to save commuters about 30 seconds on their commute. The Credit and Humber rivers will be impacted. The Holland Marsh Highway will cut right through wetlands. The highway would also cause irreversible environmental damage within federal jurisdiction, including harm to fish habitat, multiple federal species at risk, and dozens of significant forests and important ecosystems. Now we will watch this video on Highway 413. Other negative impacts include the biodiversity loss, since the Greenbelt is home to a large amount of Ontario species that are at risk. Another is the Pickering Airport, which falls within the White Belt. And the last impact is drainage. So green to gray development threatens to disturb natural ecosystems, causing damage to delicate natural drainage systems, which increases flood risks. So urban sprawl is the expansion of urban areas. A major player for increasing urban sprawl are MZOs. All the threats I previously talked about, such as biodiversity loss, are all caused by urban sprawl. So we need to stop it before it's too late. Before I pass it on to Kaylee, we will do a poll on which other threats to the Greenbelt and surrounding lands do you think has the greatest negative impact?
Hello, everyone. Just give us 1 minute. We seem to be running into some issues with the polls. Just give us 1 moment.
Okay, so I don't know if you all briefly had an opportunity to look at the polls, but it seemed that all of you guys thought the MZO is probably, oh, it's back, or it's back for me. Can you guys see it as well? I hope so. So as you can maybe see here, you guys clearly think that Highway 413 and the Holland Marsh Highway and the MZOs pose the biggest threat to the Greenbelt, and I completely agree with you guys, although I think all of these things pose a significant threat to the Greenbelt, hence why I am here giving this presentation. I'm a little bit concerned about it. But yeah, there's going to be another poll right after my section before Ariella speaks again. So if you've really enjoyed that, stay tuned. There will be more. My name is Kaylee McAllister, and I'm also a student at the University of Waterloo. And if you are very concerned after what Nita just told you, have no fear. There are actually solutions. As she mentioned, there are a lot of factors that threaten the Greenbelt, and most of them, as she said, are rooted in urban sprawl. Fortunately, there's actually a very effective solution to urban sprawl that also works to protect the Greenbelt, and that is complete communities. So complete communities, according to the Government of Ontario, or more specifically to a report published by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, are places where homes, jobs, schools, community services, parks, and recreational facilities are all easily accessible. So essentially what that means is that a complete community is a community where everything that someone might need, whether it be a grocery store, a dentist, or employment of some kind, is readily accessible to them, either via public transit, like taking a bus, or active transportation, like walking. Because complete communities need to have their resources so centralized for optimal accessibility, my apologies, complete communities are a lot more compact than traditional suburbs, making them a really valuable tool in combating sprawl. So one of the most important planning tools for developing complete communities is making use of mixed density housing. So if you guys can see this little graphic we have up on the screen here, it shows prevalence of housing types in different regions across the Greater Golden Horseshoe, which is kind of a similar region to that map that Cameron showed you earlier, but it's basically just an area of land in Southern Ontario that interacts with the Greenbelt. So on the far left, you can see Toronto, which has a lot of green on its little pie charts, which means that there's a lot of high density housing like apartments. But as you move across the screen towards the right, to suburban areas like Oshawa, which is in the middle, and rural areas like Port the Lakes, which are on the far right, you can see a lot more orange on those pie charts, which is actually low density housing and single family homes. Making use of single density or mixed density housing with an emphasis on high density housing, like many areas of Toronto do, hence all the green on that graph, is the best way to plan for complete communities. So it isn't really a coincidence that most of the complete communities in Ontario, or the most complete communities, I guess would be a better way to say it, are mostly in urban areas. The most complete and walkable community in all of Canada, or all of Ontario, actually is the Annex, which is a neighborhood in Toronto. So not only are complete communities a really good way to conserve green space and protect the Greenbelt because they're so compact, but they're also inherently more sustainable, equitable, and healthy than traditional suburbs and traditional downtown cores. So I'll give you guys an example. I am from Northern Whitby, which is essentially like urban sprawl central. Like 20 years ago, it used to be farms, and then the developers plowed over it and it became neighborhoods, and now it's suburbia, and it's very sad. And I'm going to contrast my experience as someone who grew up in Northern Whitby with someone who grew up in the Annex, which is one of the most walkable and complete communities in Canada. So when I went to school in South Whitby because that was the nearest high school that was able to provide the educational needs or the educational resources that I needed. And I had to take the bus every morning for 30 minutes. And then I was at school for 7 hours. And then I took the bus back for 30 minutes. And let's contrast this with someone who lives in the Annex, and maybe the nearest high school for them is like a 12-minute walk away. So they walk to school for 12 minutes and they go to school all day. Maybe they walk home for lunch and they walk back to school and they walk back to school back to school at the end of the day. So let's look at this kind of through the three different lenses. The most obvious one of all of those to view it through is the health lens. So obviously from a human health perspective, obviously it's a lot better for the person who lives in the annex because they're able to use their body and able to utilize active transportation to get where they want to go. Not only is this much better for them physically or for their physical health, but it's also a lot better for their mental health. Kind of in the same frame of reference is planetary health or sustainability. Obviously, if they're walking to school, there aren't any carbon emissions associated with their trip to and from school. Whereas if I'm taking the bus, there's going to be carbon emissions associated with that trip, which is obviously a lot less sustainable. And the last part of complete communities that is super important is kind of like an equity stance. And so obviously this is going to be like a gross oversimplification of equity in relation to complete communities. But say I'm struggling in math and my teacher's like, oh, Kaylee, stay after school for 15 minutes and we can go over your math test that you got like a 45 on. I'd be like, thank you for the offer, but unfortunately I can't stay after school for 15 minutes because I need to get the bus home. Whereas that same student who or not the same student, the different student who is also somehow by coincidence also failing math that lives in the annex, if their teacher is like, please stay after school, we can go over your math test and I can help you out, they're able to do that. So obviously we're not having really equitable access or equal access to education, and I don't have the same chances to improve. So on the next slide, we're going to talk a little there. Oh, it's already there. Fantastic. So as an individual, it seems like there might be not a lot that you can do to ensure that we build complete communities. And while that is partially true, like you're not an urban planner and you can't like be the one that's like, this is how it's going to be. There's a lot of things you can do as an individual to actually promote complete communities and protect the Greenbelt. So the first one is the most important one, which is why it's at the top. And it is meeting with your local elected officials. Doing this is so important in any sort of advocacy work, but especially in environmental issues and protecting the Greenbelt. Planners and local officials' jobs are literally to represent your interests. That's why they get paid. So it's super important you share your concerns. As a young person, your voice is super important because they are planning for the future that you're going to be living in. You can engage with these officials and politicians by emailing them, as it says over there to the right, or that's your right if you're looking at me. But you can also do things like meet with them in person by arranging a meeting or attending a community consultation. Community consultations are frequently associated with planning projects. All of these ways and more are really important and valuable ways to engage with community administrators. Another way to take action is engaging with your friends and family. So I actually have an example of this. So I joined the GBYA because Dave Gordon, he is here, I believe, emailed. And he sent out an email and he was like, you should join this. It's an amazing opportunity. I was like, yes, you're right. I was in the GBYA for a couple months and I was like, this is super cool. You know what I want? I want my friend to be included in this. So I pulled out my email and I emailed my best friend in the entire world. Her name is Riva. And I was like, Riva, please join. And she emailed me back. She's like, no, I don't have time. So then I emailed one of my secondary, less close friends who you might recognize from two presenters back, Cameron, who I also love dearly. And he was like, okay. I was like, perfect. So not only do I have less of this presentation to do because Cameron is here to do it for me, but additionally, he's also engaged now and he's becoming an advocate for the Greenbelt. You can see him shaking his head and he's like, no, none of this is true. It is true. It's very true. But alas, moving on. Another thing that you can do to protect the Greenbelt is to make sustainable choices. So you can make sustainable choices like buying locally grown food or choosing active or public transit. This is a really good way that you can make choices as a consumer, not only to feel good about your individual action by yourself, but you're actually showing corporations and you're showing the government that you care about promoting complete communities and sustainability and protecting the Greenbelt. Another great thing you can do, which is why maybe some of you guys are here, is you can get involved with advocacy groups like the GBYA. Arielle is actually going to tell you a little bit more about that later, so I'm not going to steal her part. But then the last thing I'm going to talk about is you can get involved by participating in an environmental campaign, such as an email campaign, which I'm going to tell you a little bit more about in the last slide. At the very end of this presentation, you'll actually have an opportunity to engage with an email campaign put on by the Ontario Greenbelt Alliance, working to fight MZOs and protect the Greenbelt. Franz, who was also on this call, was a very important part of putting this together. So go Franz. But yes, on the next slide, it talks a little bit about email campaigns. So again, after Arielle talks about joining the GBYA, you're going to be very intimately familiar with email campaigns, but I'm going to briefly explain them to you. So they're a really effective way to engage with politicians to create meaningful positive change. But essentially what they do is they help a large group of people send the same message to a politician with the hopes of this message influencing a political decision or a political outcome. For example, in our situation, protecting the Greenbelt and combating MZOs. So this little chart here is very helpful, and it shows all the ways that email campaigns are helpful. Number one, they are helpful because they demonstrate overarching community support for a cause. So if a politician doesn't hear support or opposition for a certain policy or issue from their constituents, for example, Highway 413, there's no way for them really to best represent us. It's essential that you make your voice heard so that they understand how to best move forward. Secondly, it's really important because they are very important because they demonstrate strength in numbers. So if I message my MPP and his name's Lauren Coe, and I message him a lot, and I don't think he likes that very much, but that's okay. If I message him and I was like, Lauren Coe, the MZOs, no me gusta. The Greenbelt, very good. We need to stop this. We need to protect it. No Highway 413. He's probably not going to care. But this fun thing I do is I get all of my family members to message him. And I'm like, Grandma, message him. And my grandma sends him very unkind things. I'm like, why would you say that to another human being? She's like, I'm going to die soon. It's fine. I'm like, no, it's not. But that's not the point. The point is email campaigns are kind of like asking your grandma to email someone. Strength in numbers. So if just you, politician, they might care a little bit. They're not going to care a lot. But if they hear from 250 of their constituents, or one person plus one person's very aggressive and kind of mean grandma, they might be more inclined to listen. And the last reason email campaigns are so effective is because all politics are local politics. Reaching out to your MPP or city councilor is super important because they're going to elevate your concerns to the next level of government, like City Hall or Queen's Park, and that will help ultimately promote the meaningful, positive change that you want. So Mars is going to pull up another poll, I think, if it's going to work. I pray it does. There we go. And you are welcome to vote on that. And then Ariel is going to talk a little bit about the poll and about joining the GBYA.
Okay, so we're just gonna wait a few more seconds and then we'll see the poll results. All right, so as everyone can see on their screen, that meeting with officials has tied nicely with joining advocacy groups. And I'll be here to discuss a little bit ways of which you can do both. So joining the Greenbelt Youth Ambassadors is a way for you to combat issues of youth being disconnected from environmental action. We're here to show you that there's a way for your voice to be heard, and that working with a group of like-minded individuals is a strong way to incite changes that you want to make. Currently, our team comprises of 8 ambassadors, and we are fortunate enough to have the guidance and support from 3 reputable environmental nonprofit professionals. The Greenbelt Youth Ambassadors is a team of youth who are concerned about preserving and expanding natural spaces that surround the Greater Golden Horseshoe, which includes focusing on the Greenbelt and the surrounding lands that are bordering these areas. Working together as a team, the ambassadors, so us, are able to take meaningful action in communities surrounding these natural spaces to help further the protection of these important areas. As ambassadors, we aim to inform, inspire, and encourage action with Greater Golden Horseshoe youth to preserve the Greenbelt, conserve natural spaces, develop complete communities, and promote sustainability. As an emerging advocacy group, the ambassadors are taking on meaningful action to help bring youth to the table in the discussions concerning environmental threats and demonstrating actions that can be taken by youth to make lasting positive impacts. As a team, we are developing materials on how to support youth in matters concerning local and provincial politics. These ongoing engagement strategies will help make individuals and youth comfortable in speaking with politicians about matters that are important to them and concerning the environment. Knowing how to make meaningful local change is an important tool to have as a resource. That is why the ambassadors are developing these strategies for new recruits. As a younger community member myself, it's sometimes difficult to gain respect and traction within your surrounding local community. Many of the older community members might not see or understand the importance of protecting the Greenbelt. For example, I live in Vaughan and the Greenbelt is not at the forefront of my community's concern, but I'm hopeful with working with the ambassadors, I'm able to obtain resources to help educate my community members about the importance of the Greenbelt and everything important that it provides our community. Finally, we are providing hands-on experience in the world of politics through the development of responses to new amendments that are being made by local and provincial governments, as well as setting up meetings with elected officials. So since being established in the summer of 2020, the ambassadors have been able to dive right into the world of protecting the Greenbelt. The ambassadors were able to write a response to the proposed changes to the Place to Grow Act. So some of the amendments made by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing included changes to the population and employment forecast in the Greater Golden Horseshoe. He just pushed the date up from 2041 to forecasting until 2051, and changes to the mineral aggregate operations. So concerns with these changes included increasing urban sprawl and the loss of agricultural lands and environmentally significant lands. That would have a huge impact on the Greenbelt, as well as concerns with operations that would negatively impact species at risk and biodiversity of the region. We've also started our political outreach with webinars on how to speak with your elected officials, and we were fortunate enough to have the opportunity to meet with Mike Schreiner, the leader of the Green Party of Ontario. So our webinar and meeting with Mike Schreiner, along with this event with our social media presence, have paved the way for the beginning of our outreach and engagement initiatives. We're able to connect with other organizations, other youth organizations that are also concerned about the Greenbelt, as well as local youth like you who are at this presentation, who are passionate about protecting and conserving the environment. Now I'm going to pass it back to Kaylee, who will be walking you through the email campaign previously mentioned.
Okay, so I'm losing sunlight here, so if you can't see me, there's really nothing I can do. Oh, and my dogs are barking. Such good timing. So I'm going to send a link into the chat, and this is the lovely email campaign that I was talking about earlier. If you guys want to click on it, Marissa or whoever's running tech, I think Marissa is also going to click on it. I'll just run you guys through how it works. So if you guys want to scroll down once you've clicked it, and you just click the region where you live. Great, and that will take you to a link, and basically what you can do is you can enter where specifically you live. So Marissa's clicking Toronto, and so you'll see a list of your elected officials, and if any of them for whatever reason you don't want to send this email to, you just unclick their name, and basically you just go down. Oh, you don't want to send it to Mike Layton? Oh, we do. We're changing our mind. Fantastic. So you just scroll all the way down to the bottom and you put in your basic demographic information, your full name, your email, I think your postal code. Right there, that's the email you'll be sending them, and you can make any adjustments to it. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you can just click send my email, and that email template right there from your email is going to go to all of those politicians. So as you guys finish that up, if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat, and we can work on answering them once you have finished filling out this form.
Okay, so now we have the floor open to any questions. You can either ask the question directly through Zoom, or you can write it in the chat, whichever you are comfortable with.
I have a question. What do you think is your favorite part of being a GBYA?
Okay, I'll take this one, I suppose, or maybe I'll go first. I think my favorite part is like, I'm actually doing something, you know, like Like you read the news and you'd be like, oh, cool. They're talking about putting in a highway through farmland. That's horrible. I don't want that. But on my own, I don't really have the capacity to bring about change, or I wouldn't even know where to start if I was on my own, you know? But the GBYA kind of gives me the nudge I need to help make the change I want to.
Thank you.
I think Natalie has a question. She said, I'm curious if GYA has any existing partnership working relationship with other environmental organizations.
I believe I did answer Natalie in the chat, but just in case everyone else is curious. Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah. I'm from EcoSpark, and I'm one of the program lead for the Greenbelt Youth Ambassadors. So just to answer Natalie's question, the Youth Ambassadors have recently started out reaching out to various organizations. And we have been in conversation with various organizations, but we're yet to sort of formally establish something. But hopefully pretty soon we can create a partnership.
So David Gordon has a question. Most GTA people live in the car-based suburbs. How do we turn them into complete communities?
I feel like as the planning student, I might be the one required to answer that. So there's a lot of great ways that we can do that. Number one, what we need to do is we need to work on creating climate hubs. So that is a very technical term that most people probably don't know. But essentially, the problem with a lot of our communities is that they're created as like, not all of our communities, but especially in the GTA, they're created kind of as bedroom communities. So I know that my dad, he wakes up at 6:30 in the morning and he drives 2 hours to go to work in Toronto. And the problem is because, sorry, somebody's messaging in the chat and I'm being distracted. And that is because we've designed our communities kind of so that you reside in one area and you work in another area. And basically what we need to do through climate hubs are very similar to complete communities. They're doing is they're building a lot of car dealerships and they're zoning a lot of things to be industrial as opposed to residential, because they're trying to create a more localized economy so that people don't necessarily need to commute long distances to work. Climate hubs are also especially important because as we begin to move away from fossil fuels, it's going to be very essential that we have very interconnected communities and we are able to access like jobs, food, services very locally. And that is, yeah, another really great thing that we can do is we can create a better public transit infrastructure. Sorry, all of these messages, my brain is like, bloop, bloop. It's really important that we create good public transit infrastructure because I know like if my dad took the train to work, I remember once I was like, Dad, you should take the train to work. He's like, it would take me 5 hours to do that. So it doesn't really make sense that it would take him 5 hours to get to Mississauga when it's really only like an hour and a half drive. So if we create better public transit infrastructure and also more accessible and more timely public transit infrastructure, we'd be seeing a lot less reliance on cars and kind of a mitigation of the car culture to create more complete communities.
I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. Is it Mayan? I think there's an interesting question. Are we enough? Have we done it already or tried changes? What do you guys think? You guys can unmute yourself. We're not evil, just saying. We're just a bunch of kids too.
So to answer that question on if we're enough, as youth, we are the future of, like, we're the next generation. We are the next people who will be moving out of our parents' housing and trying to establish ourselves. So if our voice and if we get enough participation from friends, family, peers, from schools, even like school boards and other nonprofits, telling our politicians and showing them that we care about having complete communities for our future, and just having the big voice and that big push, we can make a change and we can make a positive change.
Hi, I'm Franz Hartmann. I'm one of the people who are helping the Greenbelt Youth Ambassadors, and I just want to underscore how important Ariela's comment is. I've been active as an environmentalist for over 30 years now, and doing a whole bunch of things, working for politicians, being the head of an environmental organization, and right now I'm working with a group called the Ontario Greenbelt Alliance, which is made up of 100 groups across southern Ontario that are promoting the Greenbelt. And one of the things that I have learned, and I've seen over and over and over again, is that politicians do what their voters want them to do. But the problem is that more often than not, voters don't tell the politicians what they want, which means that the politicians usually just hear from developers on issues. The reason we have urban sprawl is because developers are telling politicians to build urban sprawl. If enough people say enough with urban sprawl, promote green community or complete communities, politicians will listen to us. So this is why it's so absolutely important for all of you to get involved, hopefully with the Greenbelt Youth Ambassadors. If not that, talk to your politicians, tell them what you want, tell them you want complete communities if that's what you want. And if enough of us do that, then we bring about the change.
Okay, we have another question. What are you all doing next? And do you have any plans to take others to see the Greenbelt, as it's such a beautiful area? I think we can combine those questions.
I know that we have been, Ariella is probably more qualified to answer this than I am, but I'll give my 2 cents and then she can say what I've been leaving out or say what I left out. But I know we've been really focusing on this presentation because all of us are either in school or working or both. So we've just like all of our spare minutes and hours have been going into this, and we're not planning super far ahead. But we're definitely working on building our social media presence. And we're working to try and create content. Maria and Cameron are doing a really good job of that. Cameron's researching a lot of the posts and Maria's running the Instagram account and like actually creating the content. So if you think our Instagram looks beautiful, that would be why she does a great job. And do we have any, I believe that was historically part of the GBYA program. Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if we're able to do that right now because of COVID, but yes. Okay.
You are correct, Kaylee. Unfortunately, before COVID, the Greenbelt Youth Ambassadors, we were taking students out on tours off the Greenbelt. We were able to do one tour where we took a group of youth out to, for example, see a bee farm. They were able to explore the Koffler Scientific Reserve, which is under the University of Toronto, I believe. And they have quite a few old growth forests in there. So the ambassadors were able to explore all these different places and see for themselves firsthand of what can be found in the Greenbelt. So unfortunately with COVID that did get stopped and we had to shift to a more online platform, but hopefully as the world gets better and if we are able to meet up in person, that would definitely be on the list, is going out and exploring more of the Greenbelt.
I'm sorry to cut in here, but create plans yet because it is fairly new, but the Tories have suggested that they are open to expanding the Greenbelt in certain places. And that sounds exactly like something that we would at the very least consider being interested in. Again, like no solid plans, but at the very least, I think we will be having discussions about moving forward with that, with offering our input on that, just filing a response to it.
And just to answer the question about the age range, so we are ages from 16 to 30. So wide range, different scopes, different times of life, but anyone between those ages are welcome to join.
I guess another question before I crash is, when are we meeting and how do I sign up, I guess? Any answers, guys?
I can answer this question if the GBYAs wouldn't like. So you can definitely go to, you can check out the Greenbelt Youth Ambassadors at EcoSpark's page. So that is EcoSpark. Within EcoSpark, you can look under our programs and you will see the Greenbelt Youth Ambassador program there. So that'll also just give you an insight as to the different bus tours we had taken prior. And then at the very end, there is quite a massive register button. So feel free to click on that to register for the program. Sorry, what was the next question, Marissa? I completely blanked out.
No, that's good. I think the other question was, what if we're younger? I think that's okay.
We are rather flexible with the program. Usually we just keep in mind, what do you call it? The people's ability to just participate in the program, but we're rather flexible with it. The age range is not something we strictly follow. So feel free to reach out still and inquire, and I should be able to get back to you.
If you look at the chat, there's also a link there. Save it, think about it, sign up, do whatever you want with it. I guess I missed the question though from David. It says the pandemic has increased demand for low density housing. Any thoughts on how to deal with once we get to see each other again? Anyone can answer, not just GBYA.
I can jump in for a second.
Yes,
so I work at a real estate agency as a front desk administrator, and I've been talking to a couple of real estate agents, and a lot of them say that the reason people are so interested in moving into the suburbs is because they no longer have to work in Toronto, because a lot of work is remote now. And I feel like as soon as we get to that point where remote working is not necessary anymore, then people are going to start going back to Toronto, because people don't want to go through the commutes. People don't want to drive or pay for public transport. They want to be close to the city. And when the city has nothing to offer, there's really no reason to be close to the city. That's why people are moving away from it. But once the city is opening up again, once it has more to offer, once bars are opening up, once diners are opening up, once jobs are opening up and becoming less remote, I think people will naturally again return to cities.
I want to jump in also and say that I think that creates an incredible opportunity for us, having people moving out of downtown Toronto or Toronto and into the so-called suburbs. One thing that is that complete communities are not necessarily big high rises. They're also, places, imagine, 4 to 6 story buildings, which have retail on the first floor, on the ground floor, and 2, 3, 4 bedroom apartments all around it. I suspect what's going to happen is a lot of people who are moving into the suburbs are going to say, we don't like this low density. We want to have a medium density. We want to have We want shops that are close to where we live. We don't want to live in a place that's far out where we have to drive anywhere. So this may actually help move people towards understanding how useful complete communities are, not just for making life more livable and easier to get around, but complete communities are also a really important tool for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, because complete communities use a lot less energy. So all of this is to say, it doesn't really matter about where you live. It's to make sure that where you live, you are helping create complete communities, and that can be in the suburbs or in downtown Toronto.
Hi, if it's okay, I'd like to ask a question. Sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. The Greenbelt was created, as you said, in 2005 by our Ontario Premier McGuinty, with the purpose of protecting our environment. So I'm just curious why the government will now go against that first mandate to protect that land, to develop it. And I know it's probably because they can each new premier can change their mind about how it's used. So does that mean for us as environmentalists that we always have a job to protect that land, to defend it?
Okay, so I think without getting too partisan right now, I mean, the reason I think the current government would like to do it because they're getting a fairly significant amount of donor money from developers who have a vested interest in developing land wherever it is. And then perhaps right now is a time that they are seeking to push the development in the MZOs, because people are very concerned about the pandemic right now. You know, people are more worried about, oh my gosh, am I ever going to get unemployment, rather than are they going to build houses in a wetland on the other side of the city from me? People just aren't concerned about that right now. And our goal then would be, well, our goal, an environmentalist job always, I suppose, will be to help make people be concerned, to say, hey, yeah, I know this, I know the pandemic is important right now, but we also can't forget about how important these wetlands are, or how important agriculture is right now. So I guess I'm just saying in a roundabout way that we will pretty much always have the job of saying, this is important, do not overlook this, because they want you to overlook this right now.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone has any questions? Yeah.
My name is Morgana, and I was just wondering, for this next year, what would you say your biggest, most important goal is moving forward?
That's a good question. Anyone want to take a stab? Well, we know what we were going to do, but.
Okay, I will jump back in, I suppose. And I think right now, our goal is to expand larger. As somebody said earlier, we are kind of constrained right now by how many hours we can put into this. You know, we are all students. We all have full-time school, and then this is something we are doing because we care about it in our spare time. And then right now we are seeking to get more people involved to give us a hand. And then for things we could be doing in the future, there is, of course, as I mentioned, talks about offering a response to Greenbelt expansions. And we have some roadmaps laid out for when we have more hands on deck to help us.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you for the question. Any last minute discussion questions or?
No, I believe there's no other questions, Marissa. I think
Sweet.
we can wrap this up. I just want to take time to thank everyone on behalf of the Greenbelt Youth Ambassadors for joining us. We really appreciate you attending. Any words from any of the ambassadors for thank you?
Just thank you for joining us on our first ever event, and for supporting this cause, and hopefully we will see some of your faces at our next upcoming meetings. Other than that, everyone have a good night and a good Friday tomorrow.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you for coming and asking questions. Don't forget to save the link, sign up. We're always going to be here. Bye, guys.